This daf Yomi Yerushalmi Pesachim in the article Osbar edition. We're on top of Mem Ches Amar Aleph, right after the Mishnah, the Gemara Mashvus, and in the Vilna that is on daf Mem Aleph Amar Beis, the last line, right after the Mishnah, and it says Mashvus. But we're going to change gears like the Korban Eda does to Ma Rishus. And it's going on the last line of the Mishnah where Rebbe Lezer said to Rabbi Shua, Mara Yisa Rishus L'Mitzvah, why are you bringing a riot from Yontif? Where we're talking about chila of a hediot, of a commoner, to karbanos, which is the achila of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it says here, as Gemara, it says Rishus, we're changing it to Rishus, and the Gemara is asking, why is Rabbi Shua called Rishus? Do we learn how Machalas Kachim, somebody who denigrates Kachim, as Korban says, maybe Kachim is better than Pigul and Noisar. Kachim, he makes something Pigul or Nosar, or has illicit benefit from Kachim. But Mazdas and Mardos, and somebody who degrades Yom Tovim, as Korban says, he conducts himself with them as a weekday in terms of his eating and drinking. It's not that he's mechalo them, but he denigrates them and not sufficiently honoring them. If I may say briefly, somebody who desecrates the bris of Avram Avinu, either that he doesn't have bris milah, or he creates an artificial foreskin in order to recover the place where the milah took place, so it shouldn't look like he had bris milah. V'amagala panim b'terah. There are many interpretations of that, but we'll learn here with the Korban Eda. He indicates the interpretation of the Torah, which are, I should say indicates, he expounds interpretation of the Torah which are not consonants, which are not congruent with halacha. Or somebody who brazenly violates Torah precepts in a public way. He has, even though he has Torah and good deeds, he has no portion of the world to come. So what do you call it, Rishus? It's mandatory to have Simchas Yontif and to be honoring it with eating and drinking properly. So Rabbi it says, Ma Rishus. Why is it Rishus? Because you don't have to cook. You're going to have cold dishes. Ratza bisho, ratza lo bisho. If you want to cook, why don't cook? Cooking on Yontif is not mandatory. Yeah, it's supposed to have to be samech on Yontif. It says you have to cook. Amar Rabbi Yermi, Amar Rabbi Yisrael. Amar Yisrael. Rabbi Lezer means Basil. Rabbi Yeshua. Now, most of us change the girsa here. But according to the way it says it here, as Korban says, this is the way Rabbi Lezer degraded Rabbi Yeshua. He said, Maz Yeshua Chule. Why this powerful the usage of language, this degrading use of language? Again, there's different Yerushalmi who would change Girsa to like something like Meshiv or Mesiv or something like that. Instead of Baza. But according to Girsa here, it means what's he say to him in this taunting way? Hare, he could have. There's what's the continuation? Haylo Rabbi Yeshua continue Korban. Yeshua could have given him a simple answer. Chagigas Yontif, the Chagig on Yontif. I feel she taschi uchiach. Even if she taschi, it'll prove you wrong. She mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. The Shchita doicha Shabbos, and Shchita, according to you, is doicha Shabbos. Shabbos. Even though it's according to you, it's doicha Shabbos, it's harkavasa. Not doicha Shabbos. So see, there are other abundance attached, even in cases where it's permitted to the actual operations. So, and that's what we see inside. Again, Rabbi Lezer was talking to his father, but sure he has to degrade him and respond to him in such a way. But Chagigas, one of the article changes in the Girsa itself. Hold on, probably not, but let's check. He does. He changed the Girsa itself. He changed Mizbaza to Meis Tevei. right? It's based on Moshe here. That respond. Okay. So he says, you don't according to your opinion, that's Doicha Shabbos, is a will prove that there's Durabbanas nevertheless. Okay, so the Gilin has says it's very difficult. He says, this is astonishing. We learned on Mishnah it's the opposite. But near the Yontif, so he says it's called Yontif. Chigas Yontif Yontif, the Chagir of Yontif on Yontif. He turned Mishum Malacha, they were matter the Malacha of Shrechting it, but also Mishum Shvus. And there's also on the count, there's those Shvusim which are also within. How so? The Belezes who be Tamide Beishamai. The Belezes from Tamide Beishamai. The Amrut says in Sechas Chagiga, of course, V'vin Shlomim Bein Samchem Leim. They bring Shlomim and you don't do Smicha. This is and this I think the called by I forget who. Is it Dodzi Hoffman? I remember who it was. First Mishnah in Shas. Mishnah Chagiga where it on the Machlekes Beishamai and Beisil about Smicha. They were the earliest Mishnayos. So the there that's Beis Shammai Asa Smicha by Korban Chagigan Yontif. So even though the main operation is permissible, the Chagigan Yontif, the Smicha is also because the Shvus. So we see the Shvusim by where the primary operation is permitted. Nevertheless, there are abundance, and therefore Akavasa also Michutz Tchum Korban Pesach, Chimel Korban Pesach is mutter. The bringing out from outside the Tchum and the Rukain shoulders can be also right. So he says no, that what Rabbi Elazar responded to this rejection. If Rabbi Shua rejected Rabbi Elazar based on this, what Rabbi Elazar responded to him, Rabbi would have said about this, okay, I agree with you there can be the Rabbanans, but because there's no Chib Kares because it's less severe. During Pesach, Shechayev love kares. Both the Pesach where there is a chiyuv kares, there should be no rabbanans. That's where Rabbi would respond. Okay, so Gemara says the v'yasivnei kimas nisin. Although it seems that it's actually as Mashpech says it's living gears of bimas nisin. I think he has. Actually, the Korban and Pnei Moshe also have the gears. I wrote inside my Gemara the Mashpech, but. It's also the Pnei Moshe and the Korban Eider. So if that's a good answer, the Pesach because it's a Korban. So why in our Mishnah did Rabbi Elazar not say that? Elazar said Mari Yisrael Rishus Mitzvah. Let him just say that. Well, you can't arrive at something where there is no Chiyuv Kores, which is the Bishul. Cooking Yantif, which is a simple Yantif, which is a mitzvah. Even the Avera is just a lab, so there's no raya for kares, right? So you see, mitzvah lemati Yantif shencha love kares, so I'm patient I love kares, right? Why the difference between mitzvah and rishus? Make a difference between kares and mitzvah. Kaidem Rabbi Ami Hashem give it. So okay. That's why Rabbi said they had many answers they could have given. He gave one of the answers. It wasn't the definitive answer, to inclusion of all other answers. Could have given another answer as well. You're right. Oh, you have a Kamar, the Rabbi Yasser, could be like Rabbi Yasser said. Kinish to say Trin Tamin. It's like a person has two answers. We receive Chaminot and he responds with one of them. So Chaim points out, but then they're both basically saying the same thing, just expressing themselves in different terms. But he does bring down the art scroll. The Gra and Kilayim actually joins them together, and he says the Gra says Yeva Kadar Rabbi Ami Amar Rabbi Nasa Shimmer B'Tshuvas Kinish Islay Train Tamin B'Umeisiv Chaminom. So he combines the two under both names. As he said, he changes the names though. Says no, Rabbi Ima name of Rabbi Nasa, not Rabbi Asa, but anyway, he combines them. Okay. So the next Mishnah goes on and continues with this discussion of we hear Rabbi Akiva takes up the cudgels, as it were. So Heishi Rabbi Akiva responded to Rabbi Lezer, Hazoya Tochiach. Hazoya on a person who is a Tameh, as Korban says, it's Meis, who said they came on Shabbos or Pesach. If you don't do Hazoya, you can't do Korban Pesach. Nevertheless, the Hazoya is not Doicha Pesach, and Hazoya is only a Shvus. Right? So Heishi Akiva Hazoya Tochiach mitzvah. It's a mitzvah which is Shvus, only it's a Rabbanan. It's a mitzvah to do it. It's only a Rabbanan to do it. Ve'ena Doicha the Shabbos. It's a push of Shabbos. Afal Tigmal Elu. So don't be astounded about Harkaboso and Aboso Michutz Atchum. That Sha'afal Pi Shein Mitzvah Be'mishum Shvus. Even though they're mitzvah, since they are Shvus, the Rabbanan asked them, Lo Yichutz Shabbos, don't push up Shabbos. Amar Lev said, Oleh Hidan. On Hazoya itself, I'm going to extend my logic. Umayim Shchita Shimashum Malacha Doichas Shabbos. Shchita, which is it's a Malacha. You can Doichas Shabbos, you can Korban on Erev Shabbos, Chadalios B'Shabbos. Hazoya Shimashum Shvus. Hazoya, which is only Rabbanan, Lo Tichas Shabbos, not put up Shabbos. So it says Gemara. Amar Lekiva said, "Oh, turn around." Or Chiluf, maybe it's the opposite. Mayim Hazoya, if Hazoya Shimashum Shvus. Ain't it Doichas Shabbos, not Doichas Shabbos. Ava Shchita Shimalacha Lo Tichas Shabbos. So let's push a Korban Pesach and say there's no Korban Pesach. Erev Pesach Shabbos. I was astonished at this bold suggestion by Rabbi Akiva. He said, Akiva, Akarta Mashkasav Torah, Ben Arbaim Moado. You're agreeing that which is in the Torah that the pay should be done, Ben Arbaim Moado, in its proper time, Ben Bechol, Ben Shabbos. So your logic is absolutely astonishing and incorrect. So he said, no. Akiva says, so Akiva said, no. Obviously, you don't mean to uproot Korban Pesach, but there is no moed. There's no set time for Hakavos of Vasel Chutz Tchum. The Shechita of Korban Pesach must be done Ben Arbaim, must be done on Shabbos. You can do the Akav and Havam Michutz Tchum the day before. They're not part of the Moed, though. That's why they're excluded. So he says, Kiva said, general principle. You could have done Ben Shabbos, ain't there a Shabbos. Can't push Shabbos. Shechita, the Shechita of Korban Pesach. Shabbos, that you could not have done for Erev Shabbos. That is Doichas Shabbos. But that alone, not the Rabban Zayasar. Okay, so this is a more fascinating historical tidbit. For 13 years, Rabbi Akiva learned by Rabbi Lezer, and Rabbi Akiva didn't know who he was. Evidently, he was silent. He didn't actually express himself in the Beis Medrash. The article wants to reconstruct the history here and say that immediately after this discussion is when Rabbi Akiva got his 12,000 students. Evidently, this was the beginning of his Arbatzas Torah. Okay, so Rabbi Lezer. The first response that he gave to Rabbi Lezer, and as Kosh says, Rabbi Yeshua evidently knew of his godless before him, but it's the first time Rabbi Lezer becomes aware of his godless. So how do we? Evidently, that's the next line that says, "Amar Rabbi Yeshua." Yeshua said, "Loza So Rabbi Yeshua said to Rabbi Lezer, "This is the nation which you." It's a pasuk in Shoftim. It's interesting. The Torah does not bring down. It's a pasuk, but the Korban Eder does, and he also doesn't bring down the precise location. My cousin brings it down. He says it's pasuk in Shoftim. Okay, so this nation which you till now you rejected, now go out and fight against it. Now you have to confront Akiva's godless. Now, The Mashbiach says a lot of distortions here in the gears, the next few pages, next few lines, and here we should have the words which appear later on. I'll tell you where they appear in the different places in the article in the Vilna. In the article, the words are on Mem Chesem Beis 369, about 12 lines to the bottom. It's a little circle there. Ashkatani Kadnei Kadmaya. So in the Vilna, that's on Mem Beis Amud Beis, right at the top. Ashkatani, it says Kadnei Kadmaya. It says Ashkatani Badein Kadmaya. That's where the Mashbiach has Girsa, and it means to say that in this halacha, this brisa, we find that Rekiva becomes, with the following halacha, becomes the Rosh Hamadabrim B'chol Makom. But then Kadmaya, it becomes the among the foremost sages of the generation. And this brisa says, Tamati learned Ezu Derech L'choika. What's considered Derech L'choika? Meaning Modis Lachutz. From Modis, certainly in I think the Bible, the Modiin, and beyond. And like that distance from Yerushalmi, which is Modiin is to the east, to the west. I'm sorry, like that distance on all sides, north, south, and east. That's considered derech l'choika. Divrei Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Lezer mem eskupas hazar v'lachutz. So Lezer says no. Derech l'choika is lav davka. That distance from Yerushalayim. It's right outside the hazar. Already begins the definition of derech. So the point is that in this Mishnah, which is actually it's a limited Mishnah later and beginning of Per Mishameis, so there, Rabbi Akiva comes before Rabbi Lezer. Says in that Mishnah, this time of Nina, it says, "Eizu derech chokim nevdes lachutz michidas kol ruach devi Rabbi Akiva." Rabbi Lezer Omer miaskupas zar lachutz. So you see, Rabbi Akiva comes first. He became Rosh. He became immediately Rosh Madabrim after this whole conversation in our Mishnah and what's described in our Gemara. So Rabbi Akiva jumps ahead, and according to our schools, when he gets his 12,000 Talmidim, it's a revolution in Klal Yisrael. Anyway, but we're going to discuss this issue further, of course, since we're on the topic. So now the Mashbiach says you should put in the line, which is 3 lines down from the line which we put in before. Ashkach Tani Kanei Kamaya. 3 lines below that it says it's B'shivin Darba B'chutz Yerushalayim B'darba Shibu Yerushalayim. It says the Gemara is asking a question where it says, wait a minute, how can you bring a raya from? And this question, Rabbi Akiva, how can you bring a raya from Ma'aser Sheni, which is something which has to do with outside Yerushalayim, to Kohen Besa, which is something which is inside Yerushalayim? In other words, Rabbi Lezer is saying it's not it doesn't have to do with Yerushalayim, outside Yerushalayim, it's to do with outside the Hazorah. And therefore, it's not comparable. It's in Yerushalayim proper. We're distinguishing between inside the Hazorah and outside the Hazorah. So how can we bring a raya from Ma'aser Sheni to the Korban Pesach? If one has to do with being outside Yerushalayim, must do with, according to Rabbi Lezer at least, what has to do with being outside Yerushalayim must do with being outside the Hazorah. And in the brisa, which the Mashbiach brings down, it actually says that that's to do with Makom Asiyosai, right? Makom Lezer holds it's Makom Asiyosai. It doesn't have to do with Makom has to do with Yerushalayim. It has to do with the place where the carbon is being done. So therefore, how can we bring evidence from one to the other? So on that, now we put in the line which is previous to this line, immediately preceding this line. Already in Pazi, Tipata Commander on Meskopas Yerushalayim Lechutz. Evidently, there was a gear on Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer held, no, it's a question of inside Yerushalayim, outside Yerushalayim. It goes back, we discussed a few days ago, right, about according to the sheet, that's the Rambam, all Yerushalayim have it in Makom Mikdash. This would seem also to be evidence to the Rambam Shita, which is that according to Rabbi Lezer, it doesn't mean the Hazorah, it means outside Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has it in the base of Mikdash for this purpose, and therefore, and Echami would keep us correct, it would seem, in bringing raya from Modim from Ma'aser Sheni, which has to do outside Yerushalayim, to the to Korban Pesach, which also has to do with being outside Yerushalayim. So on this, going back to where we were before, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lezer, Poch Min HaKoros. Lezer does not also agree with Rabbi Akiva that, in principle, you should, if you're from Modim Mechutz and be Bafnim, you should bring your Korban Pesach to Yerushalayim and do not consider to be Derech L'Choika. But he's saying to part from Kores, we part from Kores, even if you're just outside the Azara, outside Yerushalayim, according to that version of the understanding. And Rabbi Eliezer Masnisa Amra Kain. There's a brisa which indicates this as well. Mashbiach brings down this brisa. It's from the 8th parak in the Tosefta. It says that Brisa says, first of all, Akiva speaks also in the Brisa. Akiva nemar tomei nefesh v'nemar derech choika matomei nefesh rotza asos vein yochol kein derech choika rotza asos vein yochol. Just like derech choika tomei nefesh can't do it, so derech choika can't do it. Doesn't say explicitly modin or anything like that. There lezer mer nemar richuk mokom b'maisem nemar richuk mokom. So he also agrees. There's richuk mokom by ma'aser, richuk mokom by pesach. Ma richuk mokom nasa ma'aser, but he learns it. Ma richuk mokom nemar by ma'aser chutzi mokom achilosoi. He says richuk mokom ma'aser mikra din. The rice is really play outside Yerushalayim anywhere you can redeem it, right? So kach richuk mokom nemar pesach chutzi mokom achiloso, right? Any place you can eat it. Which also, again, is going to like opinion of Yerushalayim because he eat outside in all Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yerushalmi Pesachim, he had the Girsa Chutz L'Azara, Chutz L'Makom Asiyoso, which means outside the Azara itself. And then he explains to Rabbi Yossi Shita that how he learns that from the text of the Torah. I'm not going to get that right now, but in any event. That so you find a brisa that where we're talking really that we do make a comparison between Ma'aser Sheni and Korban Pesach, and theoretically there should also be anywhere from Nadim V'nim we should bring a Korban Pesach to Yerushalayim. Or let's say they're part of Kores. If you're outside the Zohar, outside Yerushalayim, depending on whether we're talking about Mokam Achiloso or Mokam Asiyoso. Okay, that's what it says. Masnisa Amra Kain that you can learn from Ma'aser Sheni that you should bring Miradim Mifnim. But the also from Ma'aser Sheni that any place is like Ma'aser outside Makam Achilos you can redeem it Mikradin. So outside either the Azor or Yerushalayim, you're parted from Kores. The Korban Pesach says it slightly differently. It says, "Abadim shachlav. They're shachlanim api she'enu ba'azor. Even though he's not azor, you're to be chobas Pesach. Okay, so you're certainly you don't have to be in the azora for the shechita. You're outside the azora at the time of the shechita. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the discussion of our Mishnah. Heishi Rabbi Akiva. Akiva responded, "Hazaya tochich shi mitzvah." Hazaya should be a response to Rabbi Eliezer. It's a mitzvah. It's not Torah Shabbos. So says more mitzvah hazos. What's the mitzvah to be mazah the paraduma water? There's no specific mitzvah to be mazah paraduma water. What do you mean? So the Gemara says. So where it says, wwe're talking about with the 7th day of it's becoming tar from the paraduma. Through the paraduma happens on the 14th day, which happens on Shabbos. If it was a weekday, if it was a weekday, they would do azar and they would come and shech the Korban Pesach for him. And they would come and eat at night. He came with Shabbos, since it's a Shabbos, and he not going to do azar on him, so you can't shech him. He's not suitable to eat at that point. He needs to be sacked with a mitzvah. It's going to be impeded from doing the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. So the mitzvah we're talking about is mitzvah Korban Pesach. Rabbi Yosef said, "Tipoter," now because pretty much says, "Amar Yosef Tipoter." Klamar Rabbi Yosef Shafilu Shechal Shvi Shelo Yudgimel B'Nisan Shechal B'Shabbos. Even the 7th day comes out on the 50th day which happens on Shabbos. Nami Adin Kesh Yisakeh by the Tekach Menasos Pesach. he's also going to be for the Pesach. Because it's now allowed to do the Hazaya on the count of the Shvus on Yud Gimel. So in order for this man Bnei Moshe be understood, and I really want to go with Bnei Moshe because the Korban Eidah and all the other Farshim, Chaim, the art school, and a little more, because it gets extremely complicated, and also it's not does not seem to be shot the way they learn. So not even going to get into it. But what's Rabbi Yosha saying? What's he adding on? Like another Timtzim, but why? But that should be true. So he brings down a fascinating thing. He has a Machlokes Rambam Ravid. You can be Mazdan at full Yom Shomeis. In other words, can you do Korban Pesach? If a person's if you can do Korban Pesach on a full Yom Shomeis. In other words, the Rabbi Yeshua holds. I don't know about the Machlokes Rambam Ravid, but that's not getting into that. Rabbi Yeshua holds that even if it comes on Shabbos, your Gimel comes on Shabbos, and you push him off to you would have the Mazan Yudalid. It's a problem because he holds that ain't not shoich the Korban Pesach on a Tvul Yom Shemeis, meaning on somebody, even though he did the Azor today, legitimately, but he's still Tvul Yom Shemeis, meaning he's not Torah till nightfall. And so according to that man, the Omar, so he has to be Doicha Shabbos, even if it comes out of Gimel, in order to be kosher for Korban Pesach. So according to the first shot, who was the first depart there, so as long as the case where it's a mitzvah to get him to the Korban Pesach is where the Yudal came on Shabbos, and let him do Hazoy on Shabbos even though it's the Shavuos, in order to do Korban Pesach that night. Rabbi Yeshua says no, he couldn't do the Pesach that night. If we wanted to be doing Pesach Shabbos the day before, because if we only did Hazoy on him on Yudal itself, he'd be a Tvul Yom Shomeis, right? Somebody who's still waiting to be fully the Torah till nightfall, and therefore he couldn't do the Korban Pesach. So either I want to be doing Shabbos on your Gimel. So then he becomes Ois Tvul Yom Motzei Shabbos when Yudalid starts, and Yudalid he can actually do the Korban Pesach. So the machlekes between the two tipaters is whether he has to be completely Torah, even not Tvul Yom Shomeis, by the time Yudalid comes around, or that's Rabbi Yosha, or as long as he's going to be Torah that night, the night of Tezvav, then he can do Korban Pesach for him. So that's about two different scenarios about which talk about Shabbos or Pesach. Shabbos the day before Pesach, but in any event, we need to be doing Shabbos in order to get to do the Korban Pesach. That's the mitzvah which we're talking about. Okay, so in our Mishnah we said actually now we skip because we all the previous lines we already learnt according to the Mashgiach. So we skip from according in the Vilna we're skipping from the Begah bottom and Beis and Alf, from the very last word there, to the fourth line down on Mem Beis and Beis, the East Barnosh, and in the Vilna in the article we're skipping from Nimtzei Sakim and Mitzvos, which is right opposite where it says Mem Beis and Beis in the margin between the Gemara and the Pnei Moshe, to 5 lines below that, the East Barnash. Okay, so the East Barnash, Rabbi Ochiluf, and our Mishnah Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Rabbi Eliezer, who at least till that time was his Rebbe, or is it possibly I said perhaps it's the opposite. It's interesting. The Mashgiach actually learns that the gear says should be chiluf. It's like who, right? Who chiluf. It says very often we find in the Yerushalmi word it really is u. So, and that makes it worse, of course. And that's not just a question, or perhaps the opposite. And they say no, punkfak chiluf, punkfak ert. Right. So it seems to make it much worse. Okay, so I remember I once said to one of my being punkfak ert. I felt so bad afterwards. Okay, so the Gemara says no. Fisher Belezim Lamda Halacha Uba, because the Belezim himself had taught him previously. She'ain, here the Chagiga changes Hazoya to Change Chagigah to Hazoya. I think I'm sure everybody changed that. Yeah, North also changed it. So the She'ein Hazoya Deicha Shabbos, the cover of B'Shas Adin. Now when they were discussing the logic, right? B'Shas Adin means they were making the discussions back and forth. And so Lefum Kenu Amalei Ochiluf. That's what he said to them Ochiluf. And as Mashir brought out from the Shulchan Aruch, you're allowed to remind your Rebbe that your Rebbe told you otherwise in the past. So, okay, I guess it's though the Mishnah brings down shorthand, he probably did it in a respectable way and said, Rebbe, towards the opposite the previous time. Okay, Tani, we learned that Bryce Rabbi Lezer Merkashem Shechita Derech Shabbos, Kach Mashir Shechita Derech Shabbos. So there's Rabbi Lezer Shita, the Machshir Mitzvah Derech Shabbos, just like the Shita itself Derech Shabbos. So the Mashir Shechita Derech Shabbos. And the Kiva said, Lo Emartash B'Shchita, not if you say by Shchita Shev Shal Sos Me'erev Shabbos, which you can't do before Shabbos. Derech Shabbos, the term of Machshir Shechita, we say it's any by Shchita, the preparation of Shchita, like Karakabas, Avas, and Bichus Tatum, She'ef Shal La'asos, La'lem La'asos, La'asos Shabbos, which you can do for every Shabbos, Ain't Doichin Eser Shabbos, they can't push off Shabbos. Okay, now the Gemara is going to bring down a shackle of Tyre between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva about this issue. But this already is on Mem Tes Amud Aleph, so therefore we'll stop here for today.